Congratulations! You've just purchased the easiest to use serger on the market, the white Superlock 634D. I'm Ruth Ann Ralph, coordinator for the education department at the White Sewing Machine Company, and today I'm going to introduce you to your new Superlock. You will find that your Superlock is so easy to use and a natural companion to your traditional sewing machine, and it does much more than just trim and overcast edges. Garment construction, practical applications, designer details, decorative accents, high fashion trims, elegant edges, even tailored touches. As you can see, your white Superlock is extremely functional and also very creative. This video cassette is designed to show you the many features of your Superlock as well as many basic techniques. To help you learn them even more, we've made a workbook available. You can purchase this through your local white dealer. This workbook will correspond with the video that comes packaged in the box. When you purchase this workbook, you'll notice that you'll be able to use this as a step-by-step reference tool. All your settings are recommended, and you can simply mount your sample on the opposite page. Sit back, relax. At times, if you feel the need to stop your VCR, feel free to, and mark the counter number on the side of the page. You can then use that as a reference tool. Let's begin by getting to know our Superlock a little bit better. As you'll notice, your presser foot lift is located on the side of the machine. To raise it up and down, you simply just push up and down. The adjustable presser foot pressure dial is located at the top. For more information, consult your owner's manual or workbook. It is set at normal from the factory. Each one of your tension dials are conveniently labeled as well as numbered. Just to the right of the lower looper, there is a lever. This lever is used as your tension release. We'll go through that more detail as we're working through our workbook. Below the tension release is your differential feed as well as your stitch length. When beginning to sew, always make sure that your Superlock is placed on a sturdy flat surface. Your on-off switch is located on the right side of your Superlock, and you simply turn it on and off. Let's begin with threading. As you'll notice, our Superlock, we're working with cone thread. Always when working with cone thread, make sure that you have the cone holders in place. There are times, however, when you're going to want to work with regular spools of thread. When working with regular spools of thread, go to your accessory box and work with spool caps. Make sure that you place the flat side of the cap on top of the spool. To thread, what we need to do first is to just clip our threads. So we'll clip those right in place. And some of you may wish to tie knots and to pull them right through. But our Superlock is so easy to thread, I want to take you through that simple process. Let's first remove the thread that's in there. To do that, I just press on the tension release and pull. When we begin threading, we always start with the upper looper. Just take your thread and make sure it's through the first guide hole on your thread pull. We then come down and slide it into one. From there we come through our tension disc and always push down on the tension release and give a little pull. At this point, we need to open our front cover. To open the cover, we just press in with our left hand and pull forward. Once the front cover is open, you'll notice that we have a wonderful threading diagram to also follow. And I can see, since we're using the upper looper, we're going to follow the blue circles. So we continue with guide 1, 2, 3, and through the eye hole of the upper looper. You may find, to make this process a little easier, that your tweezers from your accessory box may help. There we go. Once we're through the upper looper, We want to then just place that thread right on the back bed. Let's continue with the lower looper. Again, we're through the thread pull. We come to guide 1, down through the tension disc. Press on the tension release and give a little pull. It'll simply follow right through its channel, and I can now see we're on the orange circles. 1, 2, 3. At this point, I need to take our thread and pass it from my right hand to my left hand. There is one guide that we're going to slide this right into, and from there onto our self-threading lower looper arm. You may find it's easier to turn your hand wheel towards you just slightly to bring the looper to its lowest position. Then just slide it right on its opening. We'll then take our thread and pass it back from the left to the right. Again, turn your hand wheel towards you to expose the eye hole of the lower looper. We'll now thread this right through that lower looper. Once through the lower looper, again the same as the upper looper, we just place that thread right on the back, making sure that we don't have any twists in our threads. At this point, we're ready to thread the needles. Again, we come from the tree to guide 1 and down through the tension disc. Press on the tension release, and you'll now notice that we have wonderful arrow markings to guide us right through and down to the needle. To help make threading the needle a little easier, you may wish to raise the upper cutting knife. To do this, just grasp with the left hand, push with the right, and you can easily disengage the upper cutting knife. I'm now also going to lower my presser foot and turn the hand wheel slightly to bring the needle to the highest position. I'm now going to thread the right needle thread through the right needle. Once through the needle, we will then just pass that thread back and again place it with the others. Our final threading process is threading the left needle. From the thread tree to guide 1, down through the tension, press on the tension release, and again follow your arrows. Our final guide before the needle, and again from front to back. Again, we'll reach right through and pull it back. Once we're finished threading our Superlock, it's very important to always bring the cutter back to its working position. At that point, I just dial it right back. Before we begin sewing, there are a couple more features I'd like to point out. You'll notice on the end of your throat plate is where our stitch finger is located. Right now we have it in the normal working position. To set it for rolled edge, which we'll cover later, we just pull the lever towards us. Again, for normal sewing, we'll push away. The second feature I'd like to mention is our adjustable stitch width. Your adjustable stitch width for normal setting is set at 5.5. To adjust it, we just simply turn the dial from 5 to 7 millimeters. Again, for normal sewing, we'll set it at 5.5. To begin sewing, we must first close the front door. So we simply raise that up and it clicks in place. Before we begin to sew, there are 2 steps we need to first check. After threading your Superlock, just push down on the tension release and give a little pull to make sure that all threads are seated into the tension disc. Then, lower the presser foot and turn your hand wheel 2 to 3 turns to make sure the stitch is forming over the stitch finger. I'm now going to take a piece of medium weight woven fabric and fold it in half and place it under the Superlock. To make this easier, I'm going to just lift up on the front of the toe. You will notice on the front of your Superlock you have wonderful seam markings from 3/8 to 5/8 to 7/8. We will be working with a 5/8" seam allowance. You'll notice that your Superlock is cutting right as we seam. When we reach the end, just raise the presser foot, push down on the tension release, and take it right out. What a beautiful seam. When taking a look at your tension, you want to make sure that your loops are meeting up at the top edge, giving us good consistency on both sides. When I open it up, you'll notice that I have a good strong seam. My tension settings right now look wonderful, and if we take a look at my tension dials, you'll notice that they are all set on 4, 4, 4, and 4 for normal settings. When working with certain weights of fabrics, you may find that your threads may pull more to the underside or more to the top side. In that case, you may need to increase or decrease your tension just slightly. In the same token, when we take our seam and open it up, if you opened it and noticed that you had threads showing through, you would then need to increase your needle tensions just slightly. For more information on tension, please consult your owner's workbook or manual. Let's continue with seaming. When I run this second seam, what I'd like to do is adjust the stitch length. So again, I'm going to lower the presser foot, and I'm now going to turn the stitch length dial to 5. So we're starting with a very long stitch length. And as I'm stitching, I'm going to adjust it while we're sewing, taking it down to a very fine stitch length. Again, raise, tension release, and out. And notice your adjustable stitch length. When we continue stitching, I'm going to first bring my stitch length back to 2.5. And on both of the seams I've just run for you, I've done a seam and overcast. But there are certain times when you may wish to just overcast the edge of a fabric. To do that, I've just placed the raw edge underneath the presser foot of a single weight of fabric, and you can see that we've got a beautiful seam finish right on that edge to keep it from raveling right away. As we continue on, let's move on to stitch width. There are 2 ways we can adjust the stitch width. The first time, I'm going to open the front cover door, take the stitch width dial, and turn it to 5 millimeters. Before we get ready to sew, it's very important that you then close your front cover. Working with a medium weight woven, we'll place that under the foot, lower it, and run our 5 millimeter seam. For a wider seam, we may wish to increase it. So again, we will open the front cover and turn the dial to the full 7 millimeters. At any time, you can adjust it anywhere in between. Notice the difference in our stitch width. You may find when working with special fabrics that if you have looping off the edge, you need to increase that width. Or if you have a tunneling, you may need to decrease it. Again, consult your owner's manual or workbook for more information. I'm going to again open the front cover and bring my stitch width back to the normal setting of 5.5. I mentioned that there were 2 ways to adjust the stitch width. One was working with the dial, And the second way is working with a 3-thread overcast. I have 2 examples already sewn for you. For a wide 5mm stitch, I simply snip the right needle thread. For a narrower overcast edge, great for when working with fine cottons, lingerie fabrics, and silks, you'll simply wish to trim the left needle thread. Moving on from stitch width, we need to do something with those thread tails to keep them from unraveling. So when we first begin a seam, I'm going to take 2 to 3 stitches into the fabric. I will then raise the presser foot, take my thread tail, and bring it back around underneath the presser foot. Lower the foot and continue stitching. We've actually locked that thread right in there. When we reach the end, we're going to stop, raise the foot, and push on the tension release dial just slightly, taking out approximately a 1/2 inch. Then slide that fabric back around and under the presser foot, and stitch over our previous stitching. And notice how we finished both ends. Another option, besides finishing with your Superlock, is to use a fray check to finish on each end or to simply tie a knot. But isn't it great how easy your Superlock can finish it for you? From beginning and ending a seam, we now want to move on to corners. The first corner I'm going to do for you is an outside corner. We'll simply place the fabric underneath the presser foot and seam down. When you reach the end of your fabric, you're going to want to take 1 stitch off the edge. Then raise the presser foot, press down on the tension release, slide the fabric out and around, lower the presser foot, and pull up on all remaining slack in the thread. And continue your seam. When you reach the end, just use your tension release and take it right out. And notice how great you can turn outside corners. When working from outside corners, there are times when we also need to work with inside corners. When working with a nice tight right angle, as I have here, you may wish to take your scissor and clip approximately a 1/4 inch into it. At this point, I'm going to place it under my Superlock, lower the foot, and begin stitching. When the front toe of your presser foot gets even with the edge of your corner, you want to begin to turn the fabric slightly so you can ease your way right around that corner. Again, down, out, and perfect inside corners every time. From inside corners, another option we have is by turning curves. To do this, I'm just going to make an angle right in my fabric. We'll place it right under our Superlock and continue stitching. And notice how wonderful it trims right around that curve. Our next step we want to move on to is stabilizing seams. A lot of times we need to stabilize seams, for example, in shoulders so that they won't stretch out of shape. To do this, I'm working with just some 1/8 inch ribbon, and you'll notice that on the front toe of your Superlock, there has been a hole conveniently placed for you. Simply thread the ribbon through it, and then slide the ribbon back underneath the presser foot. I'm working with a piece of medium weight stretch fabric, going to fold it in half, again place it under the Superlock, and notice how wonderfully it's going to pick that seam and ribbon right up all at once. When I reach the end, so I don't need to waste any ribbon, just press on that tension release and take it right out. And now we've stabilized our shoulder seam. You can also use it for side seams or any other important areas. From stabilizing, what I'd like to move on to is gathering. To gather is a very simple technique, and you'll never stitch over two threads again and pull them and have them break. To gather, all we need to do is go up to our tensions, and we want to increase the left needle tension to approximately 8 to 9, and the right needle tension to 8 or 9. We are then going to go to the stitch length dial, take it from our normal setting of 2.5 and turn it to 5. Let's place our fabric underneath, and I'm working with just a nice lightweight strip of cotton. I've lowered the presser foot, and once I begin sewing, I'm going to take my left hand and slightly hold on to my fabric. When I reach the end, it's very important that you use your tension release to take that right out. And look at the great gathers we got automatically. Won't that save you lots of time? Before we continue sewing, it's very important that we bring our tensions back to normal. So I'm going to take them from 8, back to 4, and again, back to 4. I'm also going to take the stitch length dial from 5 and take that back to 2.5. Besides working with gathering, I know a lot of you enjoy working with knits to make t-shirts and sweatshirts and wonderful things both fast and easy. So what I'd like to show you is with working with ribbing, how easy it is to place that right on. I have a piece of medium weight stretch fabric, such as sweatshirt fleece, and ribbing that I've folded in half. I align both edges up even, place them under my presser foot, again lower it, and while I'm stitching, I'm going to just stretch this so that my ends meet. A general rule of thumb states that you want to cut your ribbing 2/3 the size of the neckline. And look what a great job that does. From ribbing, let's move on through some more practical applications, and one of them is my favorite, and that's a casing hem fold, because I know how much time this can save you when making waistbands. Right now what I have is just a piece of medium weight woven, and I'm going to fold the top edge down approximately 1 inch. This is going to be my casing. At this point, I'm going to take the right side of the fabric and again fold it back. So notice how I've made basically an S fold. Let's place that underneath our Superlock. And I'm going to just catch the edge. Isn't that great? Now we can easily feed elastic through the end, and our casing is all finished. From casings, let's move on to tucks. Tucks can give you a wonderful decorative finish, and they're very, very fast. Again, I'm going to work with a piece of medium weight woven, and I have pre-pressed a few tuck lines in my fabric. I find that pressing works great, or also you may wish to use a fabric marker to draw your guide lines. Simply fold your fabric in half, place it underneath your presser foot, and stitch. One tuck is finished. I'm going to again fold my fabric, continue with my second tuck, always starting from the same edge of the fabric. You may have noticed that I'm trimming just slightly. It's okay, because after I have all my tucks finished, I would then take my pattern piece and lay it on top of my fabric and cut it right out. Tucks can be done with 4 threads as I have just done for you, or a wide 3-thread or a narrow 3-thread. Let's continue with decorative sewing. When working with decorative edges, what makes it really great is with working with a wide variety of different threads. I have an assortment here for you to choose from. For example, we have ribbon floss, sulky, pearl crown rayon, woolly nylon, and different metallics. You can use a wide range of threads in your Superlock. I'm going to work with the metallic today. When working with decorative threads, they will generally first be placed in the upper looper. So let's go up, clip the upper looper thread, take the spool off. I've placed the spool on. I'm going to take that thread up to the tree, and before I begin sewing, I want to take one of our spool caps, because we're using a regular spool of thread, and place that right on top. I'm then going to take our thread and make sure that your thread can feed freely. Some regular spools of threads have little notches in them, so then just flip the spool over, replace the cap, bring it through the first guide, and then do an over-the-top knot. Once my knot is tied, I'm going to go to my tension release, push down, give a little pull, and you'll notice that our decorative thread should pull right through. If you notice when looking back at the face of the machine that your decorative thread has not come into the channel, just guide it through. You may need to open the front cover and make sure that it gets seated right into its channel. Push on your tension release again and pull it through. Now, wasn't that easy? I'm going to close the front cover door again because it's always important when sewing to have that shut. I'm bringing my needles to the highest position because when doing decorative edges, we generally will do a 3-thread stitch. To save time today, I'm going to just snip the right needle thread. If I was making an actual garment, I would remove that needle. Just push on the release and pull that out. I'm working on a nice heavyweight piece of fabric such as a denim. I've placed it under the foot and now running our edge. You may wish to bring your stitch length even closer together. When I'm coming down to this edge, I'm going to turn an additional corner for you. I've taken 1 stitch off the edge, down, over, back, pull up the remaining slack, and continue with our edge. And look what a beautiful finish we can get by using decorative threads. Moving on from decorative threads, what I'd like to do for you now is a flat lock. To do a flat lock, we're going to need to make a tension adjustment. What I'm first going to do is go up to my left needle, and I'm going to take that from our normal setting of 4 and turn it to 0. I am then going to go to my lower looper, and I'm going to increase it, again from the normal setting of 4 to approximately 6 to 8. When doing a flat lock, you'll generally want to fold your fabric in half, place it under the presser foot, lower the foot, and begin seaming. When doing a flat lock, you generally don't want to trim the seam. To help make this even easier for you, your white Superlock has an optional accessory available referred to as the blind hem foot. This blind hem foot has a wonderful guide along the edge that can guide your fold and prevent you from trimming. We just open it and pull it flat. Isn't that great? Think of the different decorative finishes you can add to many different garments. Besides using flat locking for embellishing, you can also use it for a lace application. I have my medium weight, my lingerie fabric, a piece of lace, and you want to place them with right sides on top of each other. So in other words, right sides are together. I place it underneath the presser foot and again continue serging. You'll notice this time that I'm trimming slightly. When I reach the end, we'll take that right out and again pull it flat. On the right side of our fabric, we have a beautiful ladder stitch finish. This is definitely ready-made. On the reverse side, you'll notice that your flat lock has encased it in. By still having the metallic thread in our upper looper, you can notice that this gives a wonderful decorative finish. Moving on from the lace application, to finish this slip off, we need to add elastic. When working with lingerie elastic, you want to make sure that you always have the loops going away from you, or in other words, facing the bottom of the slip. I've placed it right underneath the presser foot, and I'm going to take a couple stitches first. Once I've begun stitching into my fabric, I'm going to stretch the elastic. Once it's done, just pull that up to give us a wonderful ladder stitch finish. And look how fast and easy you can make a slip. Add a side seam and you're ready to go. Let's continue with our rolled edge. To do a rolled edge, we're going to need to first make some adjustments. Let's go up to our tension setting, take it from 0 and bring it back to the normal of 4. Because we want this fabric to roll, we're going to keep our lower looper at the 7 to 8 setting. When doing a rolled edge, we need to work with 3 threads, similar to the flat lock. When working with the flat lock, we were using a left needle stitch. Right now, we need to move to right needle. What I'm going to do is open my front cover door, disengage my upper cutting knife. So again, we push and turn. I'm going to lower my presser foot, and using my scissor, I'm going to clip the left needle thread. At this point, I'm going to go to my accessory kit, and in the accessory kit, I have a fine screwdriver. This little screwdriver is great for taking out the needles. One of the neat things about our Superlock is that there are 2 different screws to hold each needle in place. We're going to take out the left needle, so I'm going to loosen the upper screw. I find it's easier to place my left hand in, reach, and take the needle right out of the way. A good place to place this needle when you're not using it so you won't lose it is up in the left needle cone thread. So if you just place that needle right in there, when you're ready to resume 4-thread stitching, it's easy to find. Again, I'm going to need to rethread the right needle. So I'm going to make sure that we're through the tension. We're going to follow our nice, easy chart right around through the guide, and we're going to thread it from front to back. Once your needle is threaded, again, just place that thread right on the back with all the others, making sure that your thread does not get a twist in it. I find it's easiest to raise the foot, push on the tension release, and give a little pull to make sure everything is seated. I'm going to take my cutter and place it back into the working position. I'm now going to take my stitch finger, remember that was on the front of the throat plate, move it from the normal position to the rolled edge position by just pulling forward. We're now ready to try our rolled edge. So let's close the front cover, and I'm going to move our stitch length closer to 1. That'll give us a little bit more of a finer finish. Working on a nice lightweight piece of fabric, we place that under the presser foot and begin stitching. Right now I'm still working with our decorative metallic thread, so it's going to give us a very shiny finish. But when doing rolled edges, really any different type of thread looks beautiful. Whether you use your standard cone thread, a sulky rayon, or a woolly nylon that will fill in more. Your rolled edge can be used for hemming or just finishing simple edges like for ruffles and different little single edges, scarves, things like that. Isn't it great how fast it is, and it gives you the most professional results? Besides using a tight rolled edge like we have done now, what I also recommend is by doing a narrow edge or a scarf edge. To do that, I'm going to increase my stitch length to approximately 3. When I do this edge, I'm actually going to run 2 stitches for you. One is with my tensions set at their settings right now. You'll notice that this edge gives us more of a whip and roll finish. I mentioned that I was going to run 2 edges. The second one is more of a true narrow edge. And to achieve the true narrow edge, we're going to need to decrease the tension on our lower looper. So let's take that from the setting of 7.5 to 8 back to the normal of 4. By doing this, we're going to balance our edge. Notice now how instead of rolling to the underside, we're going to meet evenly at the edge. One of the exciting things about your 634D is the fact that it's a D, and that D stands for differential feed. We use the differential feed when working with a wide variety of different threads. When using our differential feed, you'll generally use it as a 4 thread. So let's set our Superlock back up for 4 thread stitching. I'm going to first take that decorative thread off the upper looper. So we're going to clip it, take the spool cap off, as well as the decorative spool, and replace it with our cone thread. We'll take the thread up to the tree, again, down through the first guide and our tension. To save time, we're going to do that same over the top knot. Sometimes tying knots can be easier than other times. One of the neat things about your Superlock is it's so easy to thread, you could have easily threaded that right back through. All of my tensions we want to make sure are set at their normal settings of 4, 4, 4, and 4. I'm now going to take our needle that we removed and place it back in. To do that, we're going to open the front cover, disengage the cutting knife, lower your presser foot. Remember that on your needles, there are 2 sides. It's rounded and flat. You always want to place the flat side to the back. It's the only way it will fit in. Sometimes by turning your hand wheel to the highest position, it makes it easier to bring that needle in place. Just tighten it down. We then want to thread the left needle through the tension, follow the guide, down. If you need, trim any burrs off, and from front to back. Once your needle is threaded, just pull that thread to the back and underneath the presser foot. Like always, press down on the tension release and give a little pull. I'm now going to place my cutting knife back into the working position by just turning down. While in this position, we're going to go to our stitch finger, take it from the rolled edge setting, and just push it to normal. Let's close the front cover and I'll show you your differential feed. When working with some special fabrics, for example, a real fine sheer fabric, when we begin to run our seam, you may find that you experience some puckering and pulling. Notice on this seam where you're getting some pulling. To eliminate this pulling, we're going to go over to our differential feed lever, take it from the normal setting, and turn it to 0.7. By turning to 0.7, what we've actually done is told our machine that we need our front feed teeth to go slower than the back feed teeth to keep this fabric from pulling. Now notice the difference. Isn't it great how your Superlock is designed to work with all fabric weights? From real shears onto very bulky sweater knits. Let's show you what happens when working with sweater knits. I want to first begin by taking our differential feed dial back to the normal setting. I'm going to place our sweater knit underneath the presser foot, and while sewing it, we should find that we're going to get some lettucing. In some cases, this might be a beautiful decorative edge, but on the bottom of my sweater, it's quite undesirable. To bring us to a good stitch, I'm going to go to my differential feed dial, again, turn it from N all the way to the setting of 2. What's happening is that the front feed teeth are now feeding twice as fast as the back feed teeth, and they're going to keep this sweater knit from distorting. Notice the difference. Perfect finishes with even the bulkiest of knits. Besides being able to get a good stitch on knits, one of the neat things about your differential feed set at the setting of 2 is that it can gather for you. One of the areas I like to use differential feed gathering for is when I'm putting in sleeve caps or hemming circular skirts, because you'll notice that it'll just pull it in slightly. Now, can't you imagine that for a sleeve and how much time it would save you? What I'd like to share with you now are some of the wonderful optional accessories that are available. You may purchase these accessory feet through your local white dealer. The first accessory foot I'd like to start with is our piping foot, and it's one of my favorites. What makes the piping foot special is from the top, it looks like your standard presser foot. But when we turn it over, you'll notice that there's a channel right through the center. This channel is going to guide our piping through perfectly, so we can get great results all the time. To change our presser foot, let's first take the regular foot off. To do that, I'm going to raise our presser foot, and going to the back of the foot, there's a little button. I just push, and the foot snaps right off. When pushing up on your presser foot lift, you'll notice that you have an additional lift, so you can easily slide that foot right out and place your piping foot right under. Just align the pin with the ankle, lower the presser foot, and it'll snap in place. Now, wasn't that easy? To put on piping, what I'm going to work with is just 2 pieces of sweatshirt fleece and a piece of ready-made piping. Place your piping along one edge. Always leave about 1 inch extending in the very beginning. It makes it easier to channel. Then place your second piece of fabric right on top with right sides together. Place it underneath the presser foot. Lower the foot, and before we continue sewing, always remember to take a quick check across your Superlock. I see my tensions are normal, but my differential feed is set on 2. So let's take that back to the normal setting. My stitch length is normal, so now I'm ready to sew. You will notice that your Superlock will automatically pick this piping up and channel it right in place. And like I said, perfect piping results every time. Besides being able to put in piping, you can also make your own and even put in zippers. One of the other great optional accessories is the elastic foot. And what makes the elastic foot so great is it'll stretch the elastic right for you. Let's place the elastic foot on. To do that, we first snap off the piping foot by pressing down, raising up for extra lift, sliding the piping foot out, the elastic foot in, and lower it right down, and it'll snap right in place. I'm going to work with a nice piece of silky fabric like lingerie. But before we stitch this, let's first take a look at our settings. You'll notice all of our tensions are normal, our differential feed is neutral, and our stitch length needs to be increased from 2.5 all the way to 5. Let's place the fabric under the foot and begin stitching. If you'd like more stretch in your elastic, just turn the tension screw to the right. The tighter you turn it, the more stretch will be placed on your fabric. When you reach the end, just use the tension release and take it right out. Perfect elastic results every time. And it automatically stretched it right for us. Besides our optional elastic foot, one of the other feet that are available is our blind hem foot. And your blind hem foot can save you lots of time. What makes it so nice is we have an easy guide screw located on the top, so we can guide the edge of our folds right next to it. Let's snap the blind hem foot on. Again, push, raise, and slide it right out of the way. To place the blind hem foot on, we bring that in and lower the presser foot, and it'll snap right in place. Let's double check our settings. Again, tensions are normal, differential feed is normal, and when doing a blind hem, you'll also want to keep your stitch length on 5. For the best blind hems, I recommend that you remove the right needle. So let's go in, clip that right needle thread, find our little screwdriver. Again, I find it easiest to open the front cover, disengage the cutting knife. Now to remove the right needle, just use your small screwdriver and loosen the lower screw. That will slide the right needle right out of place. When not in use, store that in the spool of thread that you're not using. Again, remember to always bring the cutter back to the working position and to close the front door. The key to doing blind hems is really in the fold of your fabric. I'm working with a piece of medium weight stretch fabric. Right now I have the right side of the fabric facing me. I'm going to fold under one edge approximately 1 inch. That would be our hem. To sew it, I'm then going to flip it back towards me so we're making that S formation. Place the fabric under the presser foot with the wrong side facing you. Raise the presser foot, allow your fabric to slide right in place, lower, and begin stitching. I find that if you apply a little bit of pressure at the beginning of your fabric, you'll have great success. After stitching approximately 1 inch, take a look at your stitch, and we're catching just the right amount of fabric. If you found you were catching too much, by going to the screw located on the top of the blind hem foot, you would want to loosen it and move the guide to the left. If you weren't catching enough fabric, you would want to move the guide to the right. Once it's aligned perfectly, just tighten the top tension screw and continue serging. Once we reach the end, again, tension release. We'll take a look. Perfect blind hems on the right side as well as on the back side, catching all of our fabric for us. Our final optional accessory we have available for you is really one of the neatest, and that's our pearl and sequence foot. What makes this pearl foot so special is you'll notice that it has a groove just to the right of the foot. This groove is going to channel our beads or our sequins right through there for us automatically. Let's begin by placing our pearl foot on our Superlock 634D. Before we place it on, we must first adjust our cutting width. To do that, we're going to open the front cover, take the stitch width dial from its normal setting of 5.5 and turn it to about 6.5 to 7. Close the front door again, snap the blind hem foot off, and now align the pearl foot in place. Today I'm working with 4mm beads. You can also purchase 2mm or sequence on the strand. Just place the pearls right through the channel, lower the presser foot, and take 1 to 2 stitches by hand. I'm now going to work with a piece of medium weight woven fabric. I'm going to fold it, place it right underneath the edge, and it'll pick it up automatically for us. You can place your beads on using your normal Superlock setting, or another option for you would be to place them on with a flat lock. Remember our flat lock settings. We're going to reduce the left needle to 0. We're going to increase the lower looper to about 8 and continue stitching. When we reach the end, just raise and take them right out. For our first couple of stitches, we had placed the beads right along the edge. When we made the adjustment to flat lock, it will allow us to open our fabric right up and have our beads placed in the center. Now that we've finished the optional accessories, we hope that this video cassette will be instrumental in helping you learn to use your white Superlock 634D to the fullest, whether making garments, crafts, or even different decorative applications. To help you learn these applications even better, we recommend a couple books put out by the Chilton Book Company. For more information, consult the Know Your White Superlock or Serged Garments in a Minute. These are available through your local white dealer or other areas where fine fabrics are sold. Have fun serging with your white Superlock 634D. Happy sewing!